let's talk about the Bruce film.
Yes, so Springsteen Delivered Me From Nowhere, and I'm really keen to talk to you about this because you, of course, are a huge Bruce fan, and I know that in your other occupation, you interviewed the lead actor in this film.
Jeremy Allen White and Stephen Graham, yes.
So this is the new film from Scott Cooper, who made Out of the Furnace, which I really liked, Hostiles, which I really liked, the only film I've ever come across that features a Yabahar on the soundtrack.
A what?
And Crazy Heart.
Features a what?
A Yabahar. It's an instrument that looks like a bedstead but sounds like a synthesizer, and it was invented by a guy called I can't remember his name. Anyway, there was only ever one of them, and Gorkam's. Anyway, I can't remember, but I wrote about it in my book, which is currently available in all good bookstores. Anyway, and Crazy Heart, for which Jeff Bridges, if I remember correctly, won an Oscar playing an adult country music star. So. This new film, Springsteen Delivered Me From Nowhere, has been described as a musical biographical drama about Bruce Springsteen. Although, like A Complete Unknown from last year, that was last year, wasn't it? Complete Unknown was last year. Anyway, the Bob Dylan film. It's about a very specific period in the life of a rock star. This is based on a book by Warren Zanes. Have you read the book that this film is based on?
I have not, okay, no.
So A Complete Unknown was basically Dylan goes electric. This is Springsteen goes acoustic. And during the course of going acoustic, he has something akin to a kind of breakdown. So we meet Jeremy Allen White. He's on stage doing Born to Run. And I have to say, the first time you see him, you go, wow, that is a really, really good Springsteen. He's got everything. The stance, the shoulders, the weird way that Bruce does the shoulders, the squat, that way he kind of slightly crouches, the voice, even the set of his jaw, because Bruce Springsteen has got this very distinctive, I think, is it like his bottom? Mm-hmm. And even the set of his jaw when he's doing it, you go, that's an amazingly good Bruce Springsteen. So he's had a huge hit with The River. He's toured the world. Now he's gone back home to it's New Jersey, and he's feeling lost. So one night on TV, he bumps into Terrence Malick's Badlands, which is a film I imagine everybody kind of knows, but it's like a Killers on the Run film inspired by the real life case of Charles Starkweather. And he starts to write a song called Starkweather, which then leads him to write more stuff that he starts to record at home in his rental home on this Tascam cassette Porter studio. And he starts to find something that's leading him into a different area. Here is a clip from the trailer.
It feels different coming home. There's a real emptiness.
I think Bruce is afraid of what's coming, and he feels guilty leaving behind the world he knows.
It's like I'm always running away from something. Like the past is breathing down my neck.
I don't have to tell you. We got to hit it out of the park with the next record.
Bruce Springsteen.
It's on a rocket ship. We don't want to miss that window.
The label, once you have your first top 10, they're just thinking about momentum.
I'm trying to find something real. These newer songs, they're different, but they're the only thing making sense to me right now. The only thing I can still believe in.
Then we'll get it. Whatever it takes.
So the writing and recording at home takes him back into his past, to his childhood with his mother and his father, played by Stephen Graham, who you spoke to in your other life. Paul Walter Hauser is the engineer who basically turns up and says, well, look, I'm not really, I don't know about this stuff. I can just help you with this home recording. He says, yeah, no, that is exactly what I want. I want somebody who isn't.
He's great, isn't he?
Paul Walter, we've interviewed Paul Walter Hauser on this program, and he's absolutely terrific. Gabby Hoffman is the mother who he has these kind of very, very warm memories of. And then from that clip, you heard Jeremy Strong, who is the producer and manager, crucially, John Landau, who is a stalwart supporter, despite the fact that whenever you see Jeremy Strong playing a role, you think, okay, well, the last time I saw him, he was being Roy Cohn in The Apprentice, and before that, he was the guy in Succession. So I imagine he's going to turn out to be absolutely up to no good at all. But he's the opposite.
Yes.
He is the person who absolutely believes in Bruce's talent, and he's the person who is going to stand by him. Meanwhile, Odessa Young, who was brilliant in Mothering Sunday. I spent the whole film thinking, why do I know Odessa Young's face so well? Because, of course, she was the lead in Mothering Sunday, which I loved, is this single mom waitress who he starts to have a relationship with, but who seems in the film to kind of embody this idealized version of the hometown that he's gone back to and that he's sort of lost contact with. Now, I was never, as you know, a Springsteen fan. In fact, the first Springsteen album that I got was Nebraska. And the reason I got it was because my very good friend Duncan Cooper, who's a real sort of music fan, he said to me, look, I know that you don't like Born to Run, which I thought was kind of, big and silly, although I now do like Born to Run. I didn't like The River at all. I just thought it was just, huffing and puffing. And then I remember Duncan Cooper saying to me, this is very different. This is very, very different. You should listen to this. And I remember listening to it and actually thinking that's a really good album. What I didn't know was that Born in the USA, which came after, which I didn't like at all, and had Dancing in the Dark and, Born in the USA, those big hits. I didn't understand the relationship between Nebraska and Born in the USA. I didn't understand that the songs came out of this same period. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just knew that there was this album, Nebraska, which I was told was very different to Bruce's other stuff. Now, I should say that since then, I have moved a long way in my journey with Bruce Springsteen, and I'm now much more open to his charms. I was just, I was a narky teenager who liked television, and I didn't, television the band, not television the thing. So, the story of making Nebraska really is interesting. And this telling of it impressed me because I hadn't realized how much those albums are tied together. I think of them as chalk and cheese. And in fact, actually, I think what the film shows you is that they're bread and butter. Jeremy Allen White's performance in the film it is jaw-droppingly good. I know everybody talked about Timothée Chalamet being very, very good as Bob Dylan. But from the first moment you see him, you think, okay, that's great. And in the tradition of, Gary Busey in the Buddy Holly story or Joaquin Phoenix in Walk the Line and Timothée Chalamet in Complete Unknown, you do believe that what you're watching is a character whose speaking voice and singing voice and playing voice, they're all part of the same continuum, which is really, really important. It's quite a stretch to dramatize somebody sitting at home listening to Suicide on hard repeat, or as Paul Walterhouse has said, I wouldn't listen to that over and over again, and then making recordings on a cassette home studio. Now, I should point out, I actually had one of those home studios. I had the portable, the smaller version. He's got the big professional one. But I bought one must have been 1980. I mean, it cost something like £400, and I worked a Saturday job for ages to get it, because it was one of the first things in which you could record at home. I mean, it hissed like nobody's business. I mean, it had noise reduction on it, but it was really hissy, but it was great. And there was a whole bunch of people who made stuff at home. Now, Bruce Springsteen was doing this way before we were doing it, and I'm not suggesting that any of us Herberts sitting at home with our tiny little, Tascams were Bruce Springsteen. But that technology did then become very, very liberating. But the idea of making a film about somebody sitting at home fiddling around with a Porter studio, it seems really uncinematic. However, I think the film is cinematic. I mean, not least because it's got so much cinema in it. I mean, on the one hand, you've got the whole thing about Badlands. You've also got Night of the Hunter. There's a scene in which he remembers his dad taking him to the movies to see Night of the Hunter, and it's him watching that film, and you can see this kind of revelations playing out on his face. So I think that the brave thing about the film is that it's doing something which is essentially quite nerdy. It's a film that is about, there's a whole section on it about how can they take the distortion off the cassette, and they actually get him going to the mastering plant where the guy's saying, well, I can make the grooves less deep, but then I'll have to manually separate them. And if you've never watched
I loved all that.
Yes,
I loved all that.
Of course you did, and of course I did. The question is whether anybody else will. So my feeling about it was, as somebody who isn't a Bruce fan, I can say categorically, this is not just a film for fans, because I'm not a Bruce fan. I like his work now, but I'm not a fan. But I really enjoyed the movie. It is, however, a film for people interested in the nerdier aspects of music. And you said a really interesting thing after you saw it. You said it's not a rock biopic; it's a film about depression. It's a film about how somebody negotiates their internal turmoil through the creative process. And I think that that's remarkable, to make a film about somebody dealing with their own inner demons by fiddling around with a Tascam Porter studio in a rental home and make that dramatically engaging. I was really engaged by it. I just wonder how wide that appeal is. Tell me what you thought as a Springsteen fan.
Well, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I entirely agree. Jeremy Allen White is the first. So the first Bruce you see is him as a child,
Yes.
and then the first time that you see him, he is playing Born to Run with the band. That they filmed that in New Jersey. The place is full of Bruce fans. Apparently, he was introduced at that by Bruce on stage. But as soon as you see him stand like that, you go, oh, of course, I haven't really thought, how does Bruce stand? Well, he stands the way Jeremy Allen White has got him. You know, the way he's got everything absolutely.
The shoulders.
Yes, that only gets you so far. I thought the tone of the film is like the Nebraska album. That's what it is. It's a movie which has the Nebraska album running all the way through it. So it's very low key. It's very kind of low tech. And I love the scene where he's in the studio with the band and they're singing Born in the USA. And Jeremy Strong as John Landau and all the engineers are going, this is great. We've got a hit. This is fantastic. And the Bruce saying, no, not that. We're not going to do that. And I get the whole radio pressure and, the interview that I did with Jeremy and Stephen, which went out on Wednesday, which is today as we're talking. To illustrate the film, we didn't play anything from Nebraska because radio doesn't really play Nebraska. What we did play is Born to Run, and then halfway through, the song that I mentioned on the show last week, The Last Mile of the Way by Sam
Which
Cooke
is
and
wonderful.
the Stirrers. Isn't that a fantastic moment in the film where they sit and listen to that?
Yeah, because he actually says, can we just listen to something together? And they sit, because they sit against the bed and they just play the song.
Yeah. So I'll mention this because Jeremy says this in the interview, which is on Greatest Hits. He says that Jeremy Strong texted Bruce Springsteen and the question was, what song would you play to save someone's life? That was the question. And Springsteen texted back, like, after quite a few hours, so I'd been thinking about it, Last Mile of the Way by Sam Cooke. So although that's a fabricated bit for the film, I thought, okay, that's a really interesting question, which only someone with a very large knowledge, deep knowledge of music would be able to attempt. Yeah. Where do you go? Anyway, so he goes to Sam Cooke and the Stirrers. Anyway.
So tell me, as somebody who does know all this stuff and has been a fan all the way through, do you think the film is an honest reflection of the creative process and of where Nebraska sits in that landscape?
Yes. I should say I have not been a fan all the way through. I didn't get to be a fan until The Ghost of Tom Joad, and then discovered stuff going back, So at the time this came out, I was absolutely not a fan. But it seemed to me to be a very honest, painfully honest, and I loved all the techie grooves and how do the greatest engineers get rid of the hiss that's on that wretched cassette, which they hate. Clearly, the cassette doesn't even have a box, and no one thinks to provide it with a box at any stage during the film. I thought it felt like very honest and very revealing and hugely enjoyable, and will make you, I think, first of all, download the Sam Cooke album and then go back to Nebraska and enjoy it all over again. I don't think the title is very good, but as you know, those things annoy me.
No, as is demonstrated by the fact that I actually couldn't remember what it was. I should say one thing about the hiss on those things, on those Porter studios, those we recorded onto cassettes. They had a noise reduction system on them. And what everybody discovered was that what you do is you turn the noise reduction on to record, and then you turn it off to play back, which means everything is louder. Everything's hissier, but everything's louder. And there is a brilliant moment in the film in which the guy says, well, I can do this and I can make the grooves smaller, people, they've got a volume knob. They can turn it up at home. And Jeremy Strong goes, I'd rather they didn't have to.
Yeah. And in terms of titles that that are difficult to remember. You could call this Springsteen, One Battle After Another.
Yes, you could. That's very good. That's very, very good.
So because that also works.